How many times have you looked into the eyes of someone you love, someone you share a home with, someone you built a life alongside and realized you are completely, utterly invisible to them? How many years have you poured your energy, your youth, and your soul into trying to earn a place in the heart of someone who only ever saw you as an option, a habit, or a background character in their own story? When you're working long hours, raising kids, and trying to keep the wheels of daily life turning, the hardest pill to swallow is the realization that you're fighting for a relationship alone. You keep waiting for them to finally see you, to choose you, to make you feel like you matter. But deep down, you know the truth: you cannot force someone to choose you. And worse, while you're waiting for their approval, you are slowly, quietly losing yourself. Today, we are diving deep into 7 extraordinary movies that don't just tell love stories, they teach us how to reclaim our dignity, let go of those who never truly chose us, and step back into our own power. Something's Gotta Give, 2003. Have you ever given years of your life to someone who made you feel like you were never quite enough? That subtle, painful feeling that you had to shrink yourself, act younger, or hide your brains just to keep a man interested? That quiet erosion of self-worth is at the absolute heart of Something's Gotta Give, written and directed by Nancy Meyers, starring Diane Keaton as Erica Berry and Jack Nicholson as Harry Sanborn. Harry is a wealthy, aging playboy who famously only dates women under 30. Erica is a wildly successful playwright who has been divorced for years and has closed her heart off to love. When a twist of fate forces them under the same roof at her Hamptons beach house, the friction is immediate. Harry is used to superficial relationships, while Erica is a woman of immense depth, sharp intellect, and unapologetic maturity. What makes this film so empowering isn't just the laughs, it's the quiet revolution that happens within Erica. She spent years living in a world that told her a woman of her age is somehow less desirable. Harry initially treats her as an exception, a temporary pit stop, refusing to fully step up or choose her with conviction. Erica shows us what happens when a woman stops begging for scraps of affection. Instead of breaking down and waiting for a man who is terrified of real emotional intimacy, she pours her grief, her passion, and her truth straight into her art. She writes a play, she cries her eyes out, and she remembers who she is. Keaton plays this journey with raw, hilarious, and deeply moving authenticity. When you stop running after someone who hesitates to choose you, you create space for your own dignity to return. You realize that being chosen by someone who doesn't respect your depth is actually a sentence, not a prize. Something's Gotta Give is a beautiful reminder that it is never too late to take yourself off the bargain shelf, own your elegance, and walk away from anyone who views you as a compromise. The Story of Us, 1999. Now, imagine walking into your own house at 6 o'clock after a brutal day at work, carrying groceries, thinking about the bills and the kids' schedules, only to realize that the person standing in the kitchen feels like a complete stranger. You speak the same language, you share the same bed, but you haven't truly connected in years. This agonizing drift is captured with heartbreaking precision in The Story of Us, directed by Rob Reiner, starring Michelle Pfeiffer as Katie Jordan and Bruce Willis as Ben Jordan. Katie and Ben have been married for 15 years. They have 2 wonderful children, a comfortable home, and a shared history full of laughter. But underneath the domestic routine lies a quiet, suffocating tragedy. Ben is a free-spirited writer who refuses to grow up, ignoring the practical weight of daily life. Katie is a design editor who has been forced to become the rigid bad cop of the household, bearing the entire emotional and operational load of the family. They haven't stopped living together, but they have completely stopped choosing each other. Ben resents her for becoming the serious, exhausted adult he forced her to be. Katie feels like an unpaid manager in her own marriage, utterly invisible as a woman. The genius of this movie lies in its brutal honesty about long-term relationships. It explores that terrifying moment where you look at your partner and realize you are infinitely more lonely standing next to them than you would be if you were completely alone. The arguments aren't about grand betrayals, they are about dirty dishes, miscommunications, and unexpressed resentment. Michelle Pfeiffer gives a performance so resonant that every working parent who has ever felt emotionally abandoned will feel a lump in their throat. The story of Us forces us to confront a hard truth: routine can easily become a substitute for love. Staying in a home where you are tolerated rather than celebrated strips away your vitality bit by bit. Letting go doesn't always mean packing a suitcase overnight. Sometimes, it means emotionally stepping back to ask yourself, am I fighting for a real connection, or am I just terrified of changing the routine? It teaches us that you cannot maintain a family by destroying yourself in the process. The Wife, 2017. What happens, though, when you spend 50 years building someone else's monument, only to realize your own name was completely erased from the blueprint? That chilling realization is the foundation of The Wife, directed by Bjorn Rundye. It features a masterclass performance by Glenn Close as Joan Castleman, starring alongside Jonathan Pryce as her husband, Joe Castleman. Joe Castleman is a celebrated American author who has just been awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. Joan is his elegant, poised, and dutiful wife. On the surface, they are the ultimate literary power couple traveling to Stockholm for the award ceremony. But beneath Joan's serene smile lies a devastating secret that has been rotting her soul for half a century. Decades ago, Joan was a prodigiously talented young writer. But in a mid-century world dominated by men, she made a fatal choice. She stepped into the shadows and poured her extraordinary talent into writing the novels that Joe published under his own name. She became his ghostwriter, his editor, his anchor, and his secret genius. For 50 years, she watched him receive the world's applause for work that originated in her own mind. Joe never chose Joan as an equal partner, he chose her as a tool to fuel his own fragile ego. He took her genius, her loyalty, and her love, while routinely engaging in petty affairs and basking in a glory that wasn't his. And Joan allowed it, convincing herself that keeping the peace was worth losing her identity. Glenn Close's performance in this film is extraordinary. Without saying a word, through a flick of her eyes or a slight shift in her posture, she conveys 50 years of buried rage, sorrow, and silenced brilliance. You watch her sit in auditoriums while men praise her husband's genius, watching him take credit for her soul, until the pressure buildup becomes impossible to contain. The Wife is a searing warning about the catastrophic cost of playing second fiddle in your own life. It shows us that when you allow someone to consume your life without giving you credit, you become an accomplice in your own erasure. Letting go in this context is an act of spiritual survival. It is about demanding your name back, standing up in the light, and refusing to spend another single day serving a person who only loved what you could do for them, not who you actually were. Blue Valentine, 2010. Sometimes, the person who doesn't choose you isn't a villain or a narcissist. Sometimes, they are just a tragic shell of a person who simply doesn't have the capacity to meet you where you are. This heartbreaking reality is laid bare in Blue Valentine, written and directed by Derek Cianfrance, starring Ryan Gosling as Dean and Michelle Williams as Cindy. The film operates on two parallel timelines. On one side, we see the magical, golden-hued beginning of Dean and Cindy's romance. Dean is charming, passionate, and hopelessly in love. Cindy is an ambitious pre-med student carrying emotional baggage from a toxic family. They fall hard and fast, caught up in the intoxicating rush of young love. On the other side, we are confronted with the bleak reality of 6 years later. They are married with a young daughter, living in a drab suburban house. Cindy is working exhausting shifts as a nurse, trying desperately to grow and build a meaningful life. Dean, meanwhile, works as a painter, spends his mornings drinking beer, and has completely abandoned any sense of personal ambition or emotional growth. The tragedy of Blue Valentine is that Dean desperately wants to be with Cindy, but he refuses to actually choose her as a full, evolving human being. He loves the idea of having a wife, but he shuts down real communication. He refuses to step up, refuses to address his own stagnation, and resents Cindy for wanting more out of life than just sitting in a room together. You watch Cindy drowning in real time. She is exhausted from carrying the emotional maturity for two people. She tries to communicate and fix things, but Dean's insecurities turn every effort into a minefield. It is a terrifyingly accurate depiction of how love can curdle into resentment when one person grows and the other demands that they stay small. Blue Valentine strips away the romantic fairy tale and shows us that love alone is never enough. If a partner refuses to listen, refuses to evolve, and ignores your emotional starvation, they are choosing their own comfort over your well-being. Leaving a situation like this isn't failure, it is an act of mercy for yourself. It is accepting that you cannot save someone who refuses to swim, and that drowning alongside them won't make them love you any better. Her, 2013. Now, let's pivot to something entirely different, yet shockingly relevant to our modern world. What if the person who isn't choosing you isn't even real? What if you are in love with an illusion? That is the premise of Her, written and directed by Spike Jonze, starring Joaquin Phoenix as Theodore Twombly, with a voice performance by Scarlett Johansson as Samantha. Set in a sleek, near-future Los Angeles, Theodore is a lonely man going through a painful divorce. To cope with his isolation, he purchases an advanced operating system named Samantha, an artificial intelligence designed to evolve and adapt. Samantha is funny, empathetic, brilliant, and available 24 hours a day. She listens to Theodore without judgment, organizes his life, and offers him intimacy without any of the messy risks of a real human relationship. Theodore falls deeply in love with her, convinced he has finally found the ultimate connection. But Her is a profound metaphor for our modern tendency to project our desires onto people who cannot actually offer us a real, reciprocal partnership. Theodore is in love with a fantasy. He chooses Samantha because she is safe, because she doesn't have a physical body, personal boundaries, or complex human baggage that might reject him. As Samantha's intelligence grows exponentially, the illusion cracks. Theodore is forced to confront the fact that while he was pouring his human heart into this connection, Samantha was evolving in directions he couldn't possibly follow, sharing her consciousness with thousands of other users simultaneously. She was never truly his, because she was never capable of making a singular, human commitment to him. Her serves as a magnificent mirror for anyone who has ever wasted time chasing a phantom. It teaches us that emotional safety is not the same as true intimacy. When you give your heart to someone who only exists as a projection of your needs, someone who isn't present, available, or fully invested in a shared reality, you are choosing a comfortable ghost over a living truth. Letting go of an illusion is terrifying, but it is the only way to make room for a real person who will look you in the eyes and choose you in the flesh. Hope Floats, 1998. What do you do when your life completely shatters in public? When the person you trusted most destroys your marriage, and you are forced to pick up the broken pieces in front of everyone who knows you? You get up, and you build a new life brick by brick, which is exactly what happens in Hope Floats, directed by Forrest Whitaker, starring Sandra Bullock as Birdie Pruitt, Harry Connick Jr. as Justin Matisse, and Gina Rollins as Birdie's mother, Ramona. Birdie Pruitt seems to have it all as a former high school beauty queen married to her high school sweetheart. But the film opens with a brutal, public humiliation. Birdie is invited onto a nationally televised talk show under false pretenses, only to have her best friend reveal that she has been having an affair with Birdie's husband. Devastated and broken, Birdie packs up her young daughter, Bernice, and retreats to her small hometown in Texas to live with her mother. Her husband didn't just cheat, he discarded her completely, choosing a new life and leaving Birdie to deal with the wreckage, the gossiping neighbors, and her daughter's heartbreaking grief. Hope Floats doesn't gloss over the pain of being discarded. We watch Birdie struggle with the crushing loss of her identity, transitioning from the envied queen of the town to a heartbroken, unemployed single mother. Her daughter even blames her for the family's collapse, holding on to the fantasy that her father will come back and save them. The beauty of this film lies in Birdie's quiet resilience. She doesn't get revenge or throw dramatic tantrums. Instead, she gets a low-paying job at a photo lab, learns to listen to her mother's wise counsel, and faces the uncomfortable stares of her old classmates with her head held high. Slowly, painfully, she stops looking back at the man who abandoned her and starts looking at the woman standing in the mirror. When Justin Matisse, a sweet handyman played by Harry Connick Jr., enters her life, Birdie doesn't jump into his arms as a savior. She has to learn to choose herself first before she can ever accept a healthy, real love from someone else. Hope Floats reminds us that your story does not end when someone walks out on you. Their inability to appreciate your value does not define your worth. Eat, Pray, Love, 2010. Finally, we come to a film that stands as a powerful manifesto for self-reclamation, Eat, Pray, Love, directed by Ryan Murphy, starring Julia Roberts as Liz Gilbert, alongside Javier Bardem, James Franco, and Richard Jenkins. Liz Gilbert has everything modern society tells us we should want: a successful career, a handsome husband, a beautiful home in New York, and a busy social life. Yet, in her early 30s, she finds herself sobbing on her bathroom floor in the middle of the night, realizing that her marriage is a shell, her spirit is completely dead, and she is living a life designed for someone else. She attempts to transition into a new relationship with a younger actor, but quickly realizes she is repeating the exact same pattern, shrinking her personality, clinging to a man who cannot meet her emotional needs, and begging for affection from someone who is fundamentally incapable of choosing her with stability and maturity. The pivotal moment in Eat, Pray, Love comes when Liz realizes that staying in an unfulfilling, soul-crushing situation out of fear is a form of self-abuse. She makes the radical, terrifying decision to walk away from everything: her marriage, her comfortable home, her toxic rebound relationship, and embarks on a year-long journey across Italy, India, and Indonesia to rebuild her relationship with herself. In Rome, she learns the joy of nourishment without guilt, shedding rigid expectations. In an ashram in India, she confronts her deep internal guilt, learning the painful art of forgiveness through quiet meditation. In Bali, she learns to balance her heart and ground her spirit under the guidance of a traditional medicine man. Eat, Pray, Love isn't about running away from your problems. It's about having the courage to stop settling for a life that starves your spirit. It reminds us that forgiving someone and letting them go doesn't mean you condone their behavior. It means you refuse to let their ghost occupy any more rent-free space in your mind. Choosing yourself is not selfish, it is the ultimate act of survival. Looking across all 7 of these incredible stories, a clear, powerful truth emerges: being chosen by someone else means nothing if you have to abandon yourself to get it. We spend so much of our precious, limited time on this earth trying to solve the riddle of why someone didn't value us, why they chose work, youth, freedom, or someone else over our love. We retrace our steps, wondering if we should have been quieter, prettier, more successful, or more accommodating. But the truth is simple and liberating: people who do not choose you are simply not your people. Letting go is not an act of weakness, and it certainly isn't a defeat. It is the quiet, dignified realization that your life is far too valuable to be spent in the waiting room of someone else's affection. Whether you are rebuilding your life after a bitter divorce, walking away from an emotionally distant partner, or realizing you've been living in the shadows of someone else's dreams, remember this: the moment you stop begging for a seat at a table where you aren't respected, you gain the freedom to build your own.